Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're talking about my favorite comic books of all time. This is a highly requested video. I've been very negative about certain comic book runs, positive about others, but I just made this list of my favorite comic books I've read so far. Now this list is in no specific order, so don't get your feelings hurt if one is higher than the other, but I'm going to break down all the books that I think are must-reads and some of my favorites. The first one is Ice Cream Man. Ice Cream Man is a more modern comic book, and it delves deep into existential horror and things that are actually scary as we age and as we develop as a person, becoming a parent, getting older, having illnesses. This existential horror, this idea of you getting older and having problems. The whole while, we have this antagonist lurking in the background, the Ice Cream Man, this seemingly nice and sweet character that you know from your childhood. What bad things could an Ice Cream Man bring? Well, that character is lurking, waiting on unsuspecting characters in every single issue. Ice Cream Man doesn't have like a consistent narrative. It is an issue by issue basis, which I think makes it a perfect comic book that you can just pick up a new issue and it's a standalone thing. Ice Cream Man is a masterpiece. The next one is Batman The Long Halloween and Batman Dark Victory. I label them together because they really are a continuation of one story. This is Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale's masterpiece and arguably the best Batman story. There are other Batman stories on this list, so spoilers. This book, the first time I read it, I didn't appreciate what was happening. But after a second read, I realized that this book is everything a Batman fan wants. It's Batman being a detective. It's Batman being the Caped Crusader that we know, beating up enemies. It's all of our villains put together in one story that makes sense. Then you have it broken down in a month by month, a calendar year of all of these, holidays. And then you have a mystery. You have this hidden enemy, and you're trying to piece it together. And then something that Batman does so well is having the villain of Two-Face. Two-Face specifically being like the big bad, or Harvey Dent. Man, I after the Joker, Two-Face is possibly Batman's best villain. He's just so dynamic. This is a must read, and I don't think you just stop at The Long Halloween. I think you continue the story with Dark Victory. It is a page turner. You will read this so quickly, you won't want to put it down. The next one is From Hell by Alan Moore. There will be many Alan Moore books on this list. From Hell is the Jack the Ripper story. This is a tale from ye old London town where when you start reading this, it's very hard to read in the very beginning because you've got to adapt to what the language is, especially if you're an American reader. But as you're starting to read this, you're like, this is more than just a comic book. This is a period piece. This is literature. This is a disturbing mystery that you're delving into religion, you're delving into like Masonic traditions, you're delving into brutal gore, vicious just violence, a bit of a murder mystery in this as well. From Hell is a must read. It is one of the best comic books of all time. The next one is Monsters by Barry Windsor Smith. This is a very, very modern book. This is recently released in the past few years. Barry Windsor Smith is a legend at this point as far as being an artist and writer. But this is kind of like, has been called his magnum opus. Monsters is a tale of a young boy or a young man drafted into the military, and this idea of serving your country, gung-ho, and then the disillusionment of getting into that military force and then realizing what they're going to be asking of you. He's transformed into this disgusting, despicable monster with the testing that has been done on him. Monsters covers not only physical monsters, but metaphorical ones, like the people that we know and we see and we love and what they are hiding. Different stories all converging. Monsters is an epic, and the art, this pen and pencil art that Barry Windsor Smith does it's disturbing. It is incredible. Must read. The next is a very famous book. This is Invincible by Robert Kirkman. In my opinion, pound for pound, this is the best superhero comic book of all time. Kirkman just gets comic books. He gets that page turning. I got to get to the next issue. What's going to happen? And he does it so well. All of the things that we think are going to happen in Invincible, they get turned on their head. Invincible is he's Superman. He's Peter Parker. He's a little bit of all of our favorite heroes put into one, but in a much more adult, much more dramatic, a much more focused. It's literally like reading Dragon Ball Z meets Superman. Just an epic story. I can't wait to read Invincible again. The next one on the list is 100 Bullets by Brian Azzarello. This is a super underrated, underlooked at comic. Brian Azzarello is one of the best of all time, in my opinion. This is a story of if you got a case and you got a gun and you could kill anybody and there were no repercussions, you basically got a pass. What would you do and how would you change your life? An incredible premise, but then all the complications that could potentially come with that from the entity that is giving you this opportunity. This book is so good about writing things from actual perspectives of different people, specifically minorities, people of color. The way he writes this, it is not like a DEI inclusion thing. This is like him writing this from these perspectives that feel real. These characters feel real. These people are real people, specifically Dizzy, your main protagonist. I mean, she is fleshed out. She is real. This is an underrated book that is really a must read. The next on the list is Mouse. This is probably one of the most highly regarded, most famous comic books of all time. This is the depiction of the Holocaust and Holocaust survivors in anthropomorphic form, where all of the Jews in Holocaust camps in concentration camps are depicted as rats, and then the Nazi concentration camp soldiers, their captors, are depicted as cats. This is written from a interview style narration perspective that is incredible. The humor in this, in something so terrible, it can't be understated. Just taking stereotypes, taking things that we think we know about the Holocaust, what we think about survivors, what we think about Jewish people, what we think about the Nazis and the Germans, and just like giving this different perspective. It is a must read. And then the art, in its simplicity, it is just so brilliant. The next on the list is another Robert Kirkman masterpiece, and that is The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead is, again, another example of a page-turning book, so similar to Invincible in that you don't know what's going to happen, but with Walking Dead, you're dealing with human beings. You're dealing with the struggles of the realization that there is no hope. This hopelessness, this feeling of impending doom right there. Rick Grimes so eloquently puts it, we are the Walking Dead, in one of the most epic panels ever. The Walking Dead is humanity put on display. If everything breaks down, if society crumbles, what do you become? The Walking Dead is more than just a zombie book. It's a masterpiece. The next is Animal Man. by Grant Morrison. Grant Morrison, one of my favorite writers of all time. Animal Man, you take a crappy character that nobody gives a crap about, and then you put him in possibly one of the best stories of all time. Animal Man, famous for having the powers of an animal, but this book is not good because of Animal Man. This book is good because it subverts all your expectations of what a comic book and a superhero comic will be. Grant Morrison plays with the idea of, is anything real? Are you and I real? And as soon as somebody rereads a comic book, as somebody rereads Superman, are they born again? And then when he breaks the fourth wall, where Animal Man comes through the page and is talking to the reader, it is epic. This is a psychedelic trip of epic proportions. Animal Man is a must read. The next is a book I've read just recently, and this is Moon Knight by Jeff Lemire. A lot of this has been pulled from this story to the Oscar Isaac Disney Plus show, but that does not do this justice in any way. You're dealing with all of Moon Knight's personalities here, and he does this in a way with different art styles that you don't know what's real and what's not. So when you're reading this, Mark Spector suffering these hallucinations, suffering this multiple personality disorder, it's like you feel crazy with him. It is a wild ride, and the art is incredible. Dude, this book, it is an epic, and this is the definitive Moon Knight run, in my opinion. If you're going to read Moon Knight, this is the book. The next book is Alias. Alias is the Jessica Jones story. So Jessica Jones, really a B roll, a C roll, a D roll hero. This book turns her into like must-read comic books. She is a investigative reporter, or an investigator, private eye, and she sees something with one of our classic Marvel heroes that she shouldn't see. She's kind of got superpowers. She's like a drunk. She has a failing love life. Like, Jessica Jones is so relatable. And then you have these wacky heroes, specifically the Purple Man. Alias is an epic, mature-rated adult comic book that is a must-read, and it is in the Max series. So if you know what that means, it's going to be very adult-rated. The next is a book I read recently again, and that is Mr. Miracle by Tom King. Mr. Miracle is a character that I'm assuming not many people know about, but Tom King somehow makes Mr. Miracle everyman. He is scot-free, a creation from Jack Kirby, this New Gods era type character. You got Big Barda. He's marrying Big Barda. They're expecting a child. Tom King puts his own experiences into Scot-Free, and I am all here for it. This feeling of being an imposter, being like having imposter syndrome, feeling like you're looking at your life from like an outside perspective, or that you're not who you thought you were. Man, this is the fear of fatherhood, the fear of responsibilities, all of that put in here. And then a take on a classic hero that I didn't know much about, and probably a lot of the readers didn't know much about. This is a masterpiece. The next is Hawkeye by Fraction and Aja. This book is like reading a movie. This is what they adapted the Kate Bishop Disney Plus stuff from. But again, this book, you can see why they want to put this on the big screen. It's because it was so good. Super creative. And then how, when you're reading it, the action, it feels like you're reading a movie. It's so action-packed, and the sound effects, and like you feel like you're watching something instead of reading a book. And then Kate Bishop's, a lot of it is with Clint Barton as well. It's not just a Kate Bishop story. It's mostly focused on Clint, historically the worst Avenger. Really a creative issue in the middle with Pizza Dog, a non a silent issue. Super creative, must read. The next is Daredevil by Frank Miller. This is an older comic and one of the few older comics that I really, really like. Daredevil is basically saved by Frank Miller in this. He makes him a legitimate hero. He makes Matt Murdock the character we know today. So many other incredible Daredevil stories, but the beginnings of all of this start with Frank Miller. We get all of these classic villains, Elektra, Bullseye, a lot of Kingpin stuff. Daredevil is super relatable, action-packed, and the stakes are so high. Characters die. It is awesome. The next is Thor God of Thunder by Jason Aaron. This is another one of the stories that they adapted to the big screen with Gore the God Butcher. This really wrestles with religion. It wrestles with faith. It has one of the best villains in any superhero story I've ever seen. Gore the God Butcher has lost everything. He's lost his family. He feels forsaken by the gods. He curses the gods, and he wants to kill all gods, making a god bomb. And of course, Thor is the god of thunder, and you have all of these different Thors. Like you have young, brash Thor, we have Thor Avengers Thor, and then we have old Thor coming together to defeat this guy. It is an epic story. The next is Sweet Tooth. This is a recent read for me. Sweet Tooth very much feels like The Walking Dead. Sweet Tooth is this mild, meek, hybrid deer boy that you just want to kind of shake and say, Sweet Tooth, what are you doing here? He's in this whole world where everybody wants to kill him. Everybody wants to do experiments on him. And he just kind of stumbles his way through and he comes out the hero. It is the whole time you're just praying for Sweet Tooth to make it through. Very much in the style of Walking Dead, where characters are coming and going, they're dying. You don't know who's going to be next. This is a hard read as far as a tearjerker, but it is a classic comic book at this point. The next is Preacher by Garth Ennis. This is one of the first comics I read that really changed the game for me. The Preacher is a must read. This is the story of Jesse Custer, who gets embedded with the power of a demon and an angel had a baby. And then that baby gets put into Jesse Custer, and he then develops the power of the voice, where he can control people. He then is later met up with this vampire, Cassidy, and then his lover, Tulip. One of the most iconic comic book characters of all time, Arseface, a character that, I won't spoil it, and also I can't say this on YouTube, what happens to him. The Preacher mixes religion, it mixes humor, it mixes that Garth Ennis style of just what is he going to do next. The Preacher is epic and a must-read. The next is Sandman by Neil Gaiman. One of the most famous comic books of all time, and rightfully so. This series is the tale of the endless, the tale of the Sandman. It is playing with classic literature. It's playing with the idea of these gods that influence us, specifically like death, and that we are at the whim of these gods, and these gods are interfering or playing with our lives. These apathetic beings that care nothing about us, looking down and trying to relate to us as they live immortal lives. It is a epic story. So many memorable runs that kind of piece all of the story together. The Sandman is a must-read. Stop watching this video now and go read The Sandman. The next is Saga, Brian K. Vaughan. This story is one of the best sci-fi stories I've ever read. This story is a tale of forbidden love, almost a very Romeo and Juliet-esque style, where you have these two races, almost like a mixed couple, and there are issues that develop from that. You have this like winged race, and then this like horned race, and then they have a child. And pandemonium ensues. It is so creative, so witty, crazy art style. Saga is great for all new readers because there is no backstory. You get all the story right there. The next is V for Vendetta, Alan Moore. Remember the 5th of November. We have a protagonist called V, who is this mysterious man behind this Guy Fawkes mask. V for Vendetta is again a take on British life that, as an American reader, Alan Moore gives us this different perspective, this non-American comic book that is just so awesome. There is mystery, there is pain, there's suffering, there is beauty. This story is a painful story to read, a tale of fear and suffering, and really very timely in the today's world we live in, with so much intrusion into our lives. You know, Big Brother watching. This story is never more relevant than it is now. The next is The Watchman. The Watchman is the deconstruction of the hero. Heroes at the end of their career. Heroes if, you know, Batman was washed up, is basically what I would say The Watchman. The Watchman has possibly the best superhero, or the best character in any comic, and that is Rorschach. Rorschach is scary. He's down on his luck. Rorschach is capable of doing anything. The Watchman is one of those books that the problem is, after you read it, it's like, what now? Like, it is, pound for pound, probably the greatest comic book of all time. The next is The Dark Knight Returns. The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller changed Batman forever. Batman becomes legitimate here. Again, it's, if Batman is at the end of his rope, he's coming back for one more chance, but the problem is he just keeps getting beat up. He gets his ass kicked. There is no Robin, but we have a new Robin, Carrie Kelly. This book is so weird. It is still so weird, even reading it now. So many new experimental things used here. The Dark Knight Returns is a must-read for any Batman fan. And All-Star Superman by Grant Morrison. This is, in my opinion, the definitive Superman story. Like, if I was going to tell somebody to read a Superman tale, it's All-Star Superman. So this is basically a take on the trial of Hercules, where Superman is dying. You know, he's basically getting like sun poisoning. And it's, if Superman had his last days on Earth, what would he do? It's all of our stories. It's dealing with our mortality, but you put it in Superman. Superman is supposed to live forever. He's the most powerful. But Grant Morrison takes that, turns it on its head, and makes one of the best stories of all time. And last but not least, we have Swamp Thing by Alan Moore. A psychedelic trip, a forbidden love, again, a Romeo and Juliet. All these takes on drugs and psychedelics and being cast out, being the shame, the one that has shame, and then that idea of loving something you shouldn't love, or loving another person that it's not accepted by society. All of that is put into a reinvention of a Creature from the Black Lagoon story. Swamp Thing by Alan Moore is essential reading and one of my favorites. Guys, this is my list. Are any of these books on your list? Let me know. If at any point in time you like this video, give the thumbs up. And if you like this video, subscribe for more. Take care.